Hey, how's she going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampie's workshop. This is another installment on trying to get my bandsaw to cut straight. So I'm going to take you to the bandsaw now and show you a couple of things that I learned on the internet the last couple of days about how to tune a bandsaw and make it cut straight. Okay, one of the problems I'm having with my saw is I'm not sure how to tension the blade correctly. Now, as you do some research, I did some research on the internet and the YouTube, I discovered that tension is not as critical, maybe, as what I first thought it was. I've seen reports where, like, the tension, as long as the blade is tight enough so that it doesn't slip on the roller, on the wheel, then it's tight enough. You make your blade so tight that it's hard to deflect it, right? So I don't know, I guess I was putting a lot of thought into it and thinking that the tension on the blade is so poor that's why it's cutting crooked, but apparently that's not the case. So what I discovered was the best place to check your tension is not here where the cutting actually takes place, but it's on the back side of your blade, where there's usually a guard that goes down here to protect the blade, but that's where you should check your tension. And the reason they say you check it there is because on this side, of course, we have our guide blocks, top, bottom, and that sort of restricts how much movement you get on the blade. Or the guide blocks could even be deflecting the blade if they're not set correctly. But over here, there's nothing really from one wheel to the other. So if you can get a lot of them say, you know, check it right here where you can rest your finger on the bottom of this upper guard, so that you'll always be checking it in the same spot. And they say if you push on your blade, and not like a bunch of pressure, just as if you were pushing a push button was the analogy that I liked. If you push that, you should get about a 1/4 inch deflection. And if you can see there, that's about what I'm getting. Alright. So now, just to make sure that I'm like on the right track, this is a 1/8 blade, and when I look at the back here, you can't see this, but I'll just tell you, there's an adjustment on the back for adjusting the tension, and right now this is set for 1/4 inch thickness blade, and this is a 1/8. So, well, actually I'm not sure really how to measure the width of the blade, but from the tip of the teeth to the back of the blade is 1/4 inch. So maybe that is correct. But anyway, they also say that these tension guides that come on the saws, sometimes there's a little indicator in here that what the tension might be. There's a little, like an arrow that shows the tension in here. They say they're notoriously incorrect, so this was the best check. So I'm not pushing with a lot of pressure on there, and I'm getting about a 1/4 inch deflection. So I'm going to say the tension on my saw is okay. Okay, another thing, when I was researching about why my saw drifts and won't cut straight, it was, they said check to make sure that your blade is parallel with the cutting slot. And I thought, well, how can it not be? I mean, man, it runs, like, how can it not be? Well, it turns out it can be, because the table is adjustable. You can swing the table around a lot. So one of the things they suggest is have a wide blade in your saw, and use a straight edge and put it against the blade and measure to see that it's parallel with the miter slot. When you're placing the straight edge against the blade, they say have a wide blade. Well, the widest blade I have here is this. I'm going to call it a 1/8 blade. But it says to make sure that you get a good true reading, try to set the straight edge between two teeth so that the offset doesn't affect the reading that you're getting, the offset on the teeth. So if I set that right there, so the leading edge of that tooth is just touching the top of the straight edge, and then because my blade is so narrow, this is hard to do, but get the straight edge to line up so that it's touching equal amounts on the length of on the width of the blade. Because this is a 12-inch rule, I'm going to put the 6-inch right in the middle of the blade. And that looks about it right there. Okay, so I measure from this end of the straight edge to the miter slot, and that measures 2.5 inches right on. And if I measure this end, that measures 2.25 inches, so my table is off by 1/4 inch. Who would have thought that, eh? Now I don't know whether maybe I just have a twisted blade, I'm not sure. Let's try this again at another location. So that's 2.5, 2.25, so it's the same. So I don't know whether this blade is just twisted, if it'll change with a different blade, I don't know. But I'm going to try and loosen up my table and try to adjust the table. Okay, we're under the saw table now. This is the table right here, and if you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 bolts that hold this table in place. So I'm going to loosen them. These trunnions here that adjust the angle of the table, they're good and tight. There's also a bracket here. This black bracket bolts to the saw proper, and I don't know that that's adjustable. We're just going to leave it the way it is anyways, and we're going to just loosen these 6 bolts and see what happens here with the table. This is interesting, because I had this saw for, I don't know, more than 20 years, and this is the first I discovered this. Interesting, eh? So yeah, you can move that table quite a bit. I can remember taking these trunnions off before to clean off the table, but I never thought that putting them back on could be a problem. But you see, that table moves quite a bit. So that's a little less than 2.5, so that means this has to go this way, and that's around that way as far as it can go. Two and 3/8 right on. A little bit less than 2 and 3/8, but that's as round as much as I can get that table, so that's as close as I can get it, I guess. Tighten up the bolts underneath and check it again. One other thing I want to do, just to make sure that the guide blocks aren't interfering with the blade in any way, I'm going to just loosen the guide blocks underneath and on top to make sure that that's not affecting it. Alright, 2 and 3/8, 2 and 3/8, so that looks pretty straight there, to me anyway. I'm going to set these guide blocks again, and we're going to try a test cut. Okay, I'm going to try a test cut. So I'm only going to cut this little 3/4 inch piece of softwood again, so I need to lower the blade guides, and as I said earlier, on this saw, when you lower the blade guides, you have to make sure that everything is still centered when you're finished. So I'm going to lower those down. Okay, so I have a line on my piece again here. I'm just going to try to make a cut freehand and see how I make out. So I'm able to make it cut kind of halfway straight, but I still had to swing my wood off to the side, so the table is still not set up correctly. Let's try a cross cut here. Okay, I'm going to try and resaw this piece of 3/4 inch here. I'm not sure how good it's going to turn out, but I've got this makeshift fence set up, and I'm just going to cut along there as best I can. See how she goes. You see it's drifting away, right? Terrible, absolutely terrible. So, I made sure that the table was square to the blade, or parallel to the blade as best I could with that narrow little blade. I made sure that the blade was tracking right on the wheels, made sure the tension was right, checked my guide blocks and set that all up, and it still cuts crooked. There you go, right? But when I do some other checking online and some research and whatnot, I find that probably the main root of all evil with bandsaws not performing correctly is the blade. The blades, they say, are not, oftentimes are not of the best quality. I'm going to try and find a good blade, do some research and find out what a good blade is. And I'm going to cough up some money and get myself a good blade. Then we'll try the blade in there and see what we come up with. So, we're doing some more work on our bandsaw, and we're not getting it done just quite yet. Still cuts crooked as a ram's horn, but don't lose faith. I'm going to get a new blade. I have to save up my bottles, but I'll get one and we'll do another test and I'll show you the results. Okay, in the meantime, thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying the video. If you have any ideas on how we can make this saw cut better, I'd sure appreciate hearing them. Load her up in the comments. And if this is your first time on the channel, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoy it. This little series will try to get my bandsaw to cut straight. I don't know. She's interesting. Finding out a lot about bandsaws. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well. Don't forget, COVID-19 is still out there, ready to rear its ugly head, so be wary of that. And take her easy, and we'll talk to you.